Hi, folks. Welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. I'm gonna be using my music background again. I hope you don't mind. I like doing that, and I rather like challenging the gods of copyright squatting. So let's see what they do with this one. Let's put the music back in the background, try to leave it a little lower than normal so those who are challenged by trying to listen to my voice and music at the same time won't be disturbed. Okay, well, we're kind of going off on a new tangent as of last night's creative meditation. Um, I got ideas that will lead to a number of podcasts that I'll be doing in the next little bit or writing in my uh, collection, Kindle collection, the Omnist Omnibus on Amazon, which you're encouraged to go take a look at. Maybe order up a few episodes if you got some spare points to throw around. The first 3 episodes are free. If you haven't been to Kindle Vella, it's an episodic version of Kindle. God, I'm doing a plug for Amazon. How weird is that? But yeah, I'd like people to come and sample my written works because I think it might help inform those interested in my podcast. And basically, I've got 2 published works. One is this Kindle Vella collection of essays that's up to about, I think, 30 or so episodes, uh, which you can access the first 3. And then beyond that, you've got to pay some certain number of points to access more. It's kind of a nice subscription model sort of thing, kind of harkens back to the way Dickens wrote his novels back in the 1800s, which, if you know much about that period, was probably one of the most democratic, most fair environments in which to be an artist at the time, of any time that I know of. The fact that Dickens' works could exist and become very popular when they were very anti-establishment was inspirational to me and continues to be so to many people today, even though some of the problems, some of the issues that he brought up seem rather passe and non-politically correct today. And I guess if I was going to pick the thing that would piss me off the most about the woke counterculture, is if they ever started attacking Dickens. So probably the first Dickens work that would be on their list for cancellation would be, well, I don't know, it's probably already been removed from school curricula. Tale of Two Cities was always something that was covered in almost every literature class. I'm not sure if that's the case anymore. I bet that one's been removed for a bit of cultural Marxist fluff that is more relevant. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent already, and I haven't even told you what today's topic is. I'm going to title this one Kundalini, Near-Death Experiences, and Their Creation of Virtual Souls and Karma. So I'm going to try to tie together some of the more interesting areas that folks start investigating spiritual experience through and help you make some sense of what you're seeing in those landscapes and how it ties back into what I'm telling you is the end result of the human experiment. Okay, so let me give you first a brief rundown of what I mean by the human experiment. Okay, like most religious traditions, most historical traditions give you a sense of is there's something special about this species. Now, portions of it try to specialize it even more and say that there's one chosen people of this species, and it's me, it's our people. The Jews have a very strong identity with that concept. So do Christians. So do Muslims. All of the Abrahamic faiths are rooted in this idea of some chosen people and trying to figure out who they are. The tribes of Israel, 12 tribes. Interesting. Anyway, this all ties in to what I've been talking about, and I think I'm going to approach it today from sort of the New Age spiritual standpoint of Kundalini, the chakra energy, which so many religious traditions, gurus, etc., shamans make as a point of their focus or a explanation for what happens through their particular kind of spiritual experience. And the more general one that can happen to anyone, the near-death experience, which is becoming quite a popular topic of discussion as more and more people are having and remembering these and being willing to come out and talk about them instead of keeping all of this inside and afraid that somebody is going to come stomp on you for sharing your spiritual experience, which has caused humanity to suppress a lot of their experience, especially spiritual experience, and has been one of the things that has held back the marriage. I think you'd be fair to call it the remarriage of science and spirituality, because it's only in the last 200 years or so that there has been this idea that the two were divorced, and science was real, science was truth, and spirituality was imaginary. To use the kindest phrase that atheists want to attack spiritual people with. So this is directed at those who are being challenged by spiritual experience, challenged by people saying that they're crazy, they're foolish, they're imagining things, they're soft-minded, and maybe get a few of you hardcore atheists, Scientologists, communists, there's globalists, commercialists, hedonists, to reconsider what some of your spiritually aware friends have been trying gently, usually, to warn you about. Okay, so here is, in a nutshell, what the Gaia experiment is all about. Humanity was created as a test vehicle for the final implementation of karma. I say final. Maybe there's going to be more work on it, but it's going to be in the nature of bug fixes and minor enhancements. Imagine karma reaching the stage where it's like multiversal Windows Infinity. Okay, now I'm not implying that Windows is ever going to get to version infinity. Probably that platform is very close to collapsing in its usefulness to the human species, depending on what its parent company does, depending on what its competitors does. And that's all in the nature of their corporate karma and humanity's technological karma. I'm not going to get into that today. What I am saying is that the laws of the multiverse, of which karma is essentially the government of souls, is part and parcel of why this planet exists, why it has this species called humanity on it, why it's had other intelligent species and other civilizations that have somehow been destroyed, forgotten, etc., etc. So this humanity experiment is part of a greater experiment that involves our planet. And that's part of a greater experiment that involves our solar system. And that's part of a greater experiment that involves the entire Milky Way galaxy, which is part of a greater experiment that involves everything up to and beyond the Big Bang. Okay, does that make us special? Well, imagine a monkey or a rat undergoing research, stem cell research, virus development research, vaccine development research. Do you imagine those animals feel very special for being selected for that experiment by the scientists who are hoping to make their name, make their fortune, make their company more fortunate, make their government more fortunate? Do you suppose they feel very, very special? Okay, and so this humanity experiment is not necessarily being a very positive thing as a chosen species. You've been chosen as basically crash dummies. And this is why so many people who think of themselves as one lifetime, one incarnation, one individual, can come up with some pretty dark interpretations of what's going on here. Oh, we must be in this matrix where somebody else is programming everything and poking and prodding at us like test tube monkeys. This is one way of viewing it, and it's actually, from that standpoint, a pretty accurate way of viewing it. Another way of viewing it, though, is, well, what's the bigger picture? What are we working on here? Why are we in this test tube? And is there only one test tube going on here? Okay, because karma is the overwhelming idea that we're trying to work on here. But individually, collectively, we're working on all sorts of experiments. Some of these experiments are ones that have been tried before. Some are new ones. To the extent that what you're doing here, either individually or collectively, is something nobody's ever tried before, is your effort to create an individual contribution, something unique and valuable to the multiverse. Now, the final part of this law of karma, the part that we're working on right now, the reason humanity exists, despite having been and continue to be many other species that are far more advanced technologically, far more advanced spiritually, etc., than this tribe of smart apes that we live within, is because we were created as the perfect soul vehicle, test tube, for testing out the final laws of karma. Okay? And this is essentially what we're doing here. We're part of our own experiment, we're part of others' experiments, but every single human being on this planet is part of a grand experiment that is the humanity experiment, the reason our species was developed. Okay, so how does this tie to Kundalini and near-death experiences, Rob? Okay, well, one of the things I've told you many times is that this last part of karma to be implemented is actually one of the first ideas that was had. And it maps to the Big Bang, all the way back to the Big Bang. And essentially, karma is the spiritual version of the law of force. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. The first virtual universe was created when the first real universe started to exist. The real universe being the one that is being directed and led by the first soul, God, and the anti-universe, the one that's being led and directed by God's firstborn, the Son, the prodigal son, the anti-God, the Satan, the Lucifer. And these are names that you give to God or the Son alternately all the time, because what's really going on is, like happens in technological development, when you want to test an idea, what do? You first test it in a localized way, just within the design team, work out what it looks like, how it behaves, and then when it's ready, you pass it over to the test group, and they do more thorough testing. Okay? And this is how ideas get proven before they get implemented everywhere. This is why there's a speed of light. This is why there's a Planck constant. This is why mathematics fits together in all its glory. The laws of mathematics were tested, and what didn't work was left out. Now, not necessarily left out, but kept around as a fantasy that souls are free to have. And to the extent that they develop those fantasies into something more useful, they stay around. So popular ideas in science fiction and fantasy that engage the human mind stay around, even if they're based on complete bullshit, something that would never work within the real laws of physics or chemistry or whatever science has been worked out with enough detail to make that an impossibility. And yes, spiritual is science. It's just science you don't understand yet. Maybe some understand it intuitively, which is how the famous scientists, Einstein, Tesla, Hawking, have come up with their particular inspirations and ideas that someone found a way to test and prove, you know what, that is a pretty good model of what we can observe, at least within a limited context. And thus, a creation of the spirit, an idea, becomes science. Okay, so some of the most common, absolutely the most common, I think, spiritual experience comes through the science of Kundalini, the chakra system, activating forces within the centers of your spiritual essence, and or through recollections of actual spiritual experiences that come through either near-death experiences or can also come through remembrances of past lives, which are somewhat common among young children, particularly those who have come from, most recently, from what for them was a very traumatic life. Okay, I'm not going to go into whether those things are happening or not. If you don't believe me, you can do your own research. See how frequent they are. See how often they have similar themes. See how often the folks experiencing these things have had no real knowledge of what was going on until they had it. Okay, one of the most common things in these experiences is this sense of seeing the light. This incredible bright light and feeling this sense of connectedness and lovingness. Whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a New Age, cosmic oneness freak, no matter what particular spirituality you follow, if you've had one of these experiences, you pretty much are ruined for atheism forever after. It's going to haunt you more and more as you keep it bottled up inside and hear others coming out about their experiences and seeing that, oh, wow, there's so many people experiencing the same thing as me. Maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe I wasn't just dreaming. Maybe I didn't just take too many drugs one night and, boy, that set me back on the path to being a straight and narrow atheist for the rest of my life. These experiences, this seeing the light experience, is recounted by many, many, many people, most people who have this near-death experience of almost dying and coming back. It's recounted by practitioners of almost every spiritual discipline, whether they achieve what they're going for through meditation, through fasting, through rhythmic chanting, rhythmic dancing, or substances that alter the mind, particularly plant substances that seem to have a particular affinity for taking the human mind out of its current reality. Now, the commonality here, this seeing the light, the common tendency is to view that as, oh, I've experienced a oneness with God. You'll hear that phrase that way, termed that way by people of all sorts of spiritual backgrounds and belief or not belief. The atheist might say, I experienced oneness with the universe, and will avoid calling that God and call it nature. And that's a good description of what the multiverse is. It's a reflection of nature. The reflection of the nature of the souls that have their own universes at any given time. Now, in the beginning, in the Big Bang, there were only two souls that had their own universe, God and anti-God. And they used those universes alternately to come up with new ideas, test it locally, or take an idea from the other and test it more broadly, passing ideas back and forth until they had determined either the idea was good and it inhabited both universes, whether it was maybe half good and was limited to one or the other of the universes, kept alive but not allowed to change everything, or a bad idea, or maybe an idea that maybe needed to be quarantined for future use. God and anti-God keep all sorts of little vials of unsuccessful experiments on the shelf for future use, future experiments, so they don't have to go mix up a batch of this particular souls again. And you can think of those quarantine batches of souls as one particular heaven or hell, where souls of a feather flock together. That's been happening for a long time. That's why we have so many religions. And there's new religions still cropping up. The cosmic oneness religion, which is, like popularized Buddhism, I would call it. And there are people who will swear up and down that that's the truth. In fact, there's a large number of them, of people that have had spiritual experience in this lifetime that constitutes the vast majority of them. Now I'm going to tell you why that's true. That and near-death experiences, because they're very, very similar. The see the light experience. What is happening actually when you see the light and feel this connection is you are hitting a demarcation point, a place of spiritual energy, personal spiritual energy, and maybe communal spiritual energy if you hit it in the context of a group spiritual event. If you have a near-death experience, in a subway that's being flooded and you're somehow one of the only ones that survives and comes back telling of this wonderful experience had, that's probably going to be very strong because you're sharing an experience, very existential experience with so many other souls. Maybe a lot of those had that choice and chose not to come back. When you choose to come back from that experience, when you're aware of having had a near-death experience, and you think of it as a choice, you will come back having made the choice of being replaced by a virtual soul. Cloning yourself in God's universe. And that virtual soul that continues on is going to have had this experience of being one with God, being part of the divine plan, sort of understanding inherently what their role in the divine plan is. This is how new souls are born most of the time in humanity. The old ways of birthing souls have, it's like the different virus strains, okay? The first strain had a certain infectivity, spread a certain amount, had a certain effect on the people that it infected, and different strains were either less infective and die out very quickly, and some strains are more infective and spread like wildfire. Omicron is looking to be the last viable, the last really important strain of COVID, because it spreads like wildfire and it's no more serious than a common cold or flu, which, anybody who has survived those earlier diseases and takes reasonably good care of themselves, doesn't have any comorbidities, is going to survive this one. And it becomes endemic, and it's just another of the illnesses that we have to add to the challenges that humanity faces in each incarnation. This is the way that virtual souls go on. This virtual soul is a carbon copy of your soul that operates under a different set of rules. It operates under the set of rules that it must conform to the experiments going on in the universe it exists in. So a virtual soul cannot screw up by going and murdering somebody that's important to the divine plan. That's not going to happen. The folks that have near-death experiences, that get the opportunity to come back after dying, are getting the opportunity to come back as virtual souls so that they can continue their lifetime, which is important in some way to the divine plan. That importance may be related to a passion they currently have, may be related to their passion for raising a good family, because one of the kids that they're going to produce is going to do something special and necessary and hard to replace in the divine plan. They're given a choice because they're real souls. Real souls get a choice. And by choosing to come back, you're choosing to let your virtual soul version come back and finish out your life, because your life has ended, either through a bad choice of yours or a bad choice of someone else's. Now, where does your real soul go? It goes into an alternate universe. For much of the history of this experiment, starting with the Big Bang, that alternate universe was the universe of anti-God. And whatever future would result from you having died would play itself out and basically burn itself out until it hit maybe the boundary of an experiment that was important over there. And then your soul would have another opportunity, another either near-death experience or critical decision point, which is another way that virtual souls are generated, and get the chance to ping pong or be forced to ping pong back to the other universe. And there are souls who are so wrapped up, have been so wrapped up in multiple experiments that they're ping-ponging back and forth all the time. And if you're one of those souls, you are living some pretty challenging incarnations, because you're constantly bombarded with what we call Mandela effect characteristics, and many of the people that we class as insane class as mentally disturbed. What's really going on is that they're one of these souls that is so tangled with a variety of experiments going on that they are moving in and out of different realities faster than they can keep up with it. I hope that will give you a little bit more compassion for these folks without encouraging you to enable and get involved in their fantasy worlds. Because if they are moving around, jumping around between universes, that says that they really don't have a very good idea of where they fit into any universe. And, they're like lost souls. And the worst thing you can do with a lost soul is let their fantasy pull you into their karma. So, how does this relate to the Kundalini experiences? Well, most of the practitioners of this kind of healing, magic, magic power, etc., tend to gravitate towards healing because that is a good entry into the self-help arena, one which you can enter very easily these days because of social media and because of the ease of spreading fake news in the internet age. It's easier now to become a snake oil selling guru than ever before. But you're saying, wait, I'm healing people. I'm doing things. I can see it. There are people that after a session with me, oh, their life is completely changed. They know what their purpose is. They know where they're going. Oh, I helped them. I healed them. What you've actually done, if they've had that profound a change within just a few sessions, you have basically stimulated their spiritual energy to the point that the virtual soul process has been activated. By dealing with their trauma, by forcing their trauma to be bubbled to the surface, these heavy, intense experiences that I'm sure you all are aware happen in your therapy are more times than not, when they seem to be successful, merely pushing that soul over the edge of accepting a virtual soul replacement. Now, what happens then? Well, it's a karmic event. Anytime you push a virtual soul, push a soul to a choice that creates a virtual soul and sort of an anti-soul, although it's the same soul just operating under the rules of a different universe, equal and opposite reaction. You're creating a karmic entanglement for the souls involved. Those two souls, the new virtual soul and the original soul who were the beneficiaries of your therapy, are now tangled with each other. They're tangled with realities in two different universes, and you as the instigator of that, the force behind that, have created a karmic issue within yourself. And this is why, exactly why, so many spiritual practitioners have very, very severe health problems and have their own very, very severe mental problems. Because, like it or not, this healing process that gives you so much satisfaction, you can see people head off on a new path, which you believe you gave them. Well, you did in a way, but you didn't know what you were doing. You didn't know that you were just creating a virtual soul pair, one of which was continuing in the universe that you observe and seemed to be back on the straight and narrow, back on the right path. Or not. Sometimes people get completely destroyed by your therapy, and then you say, well, oh, they were already too damaged for me to help them. They were beyond my help. I can't help everybody. I'm not God. And then you go on thinking you're God with the people you can help until you have enough failures that your own karma comes to haunt you beyond your endurance. So, what is Rob trying to get at here? There are so many virtual souls running around in humanity right now, it's not funny. And it creates some very strange circumstances. For instance, there are lots of souls running around thinking, I'm God. Thinking I'm this God, that God. Oh, I'm an incarnation of Thor. I'm an incarnation. I've met people who are absolutely certain that they were an incarnation of Cleopatra, and I actually believe them. Their identity with that makes sense, and they have a good rationalization for it. And to their lights, because they don't understand karma and virtual souls, they are that Cleopatra, not a Cleopatra. And this is the nature of the beast. You'll run across people who have a memory of being somebody special in another civilization, in this civilization, in another mythology, in another this or that. And it will look a lot like, oh, they just came to that because they watched such and such series, Vikings, and suddenly they felt, oh, I've got this affinity and I know that I was that character in a past life. And you'll write it off that way, and many times that might be part of the truth. But the truth is far murkier than that because of virtual souls. And this is how basically cultural Marxism works. Cultural Marxism, or commercialism, as we call it in the United States, is about identifying themes of resonance in people's spiritual essence, their emotional self, and encouraging them to resonate with a new version of a very, very foggy past that they may have had. This is why some periods of history are incredibly romantic to us, and other periods we hardly remember anything about. The Dark Ages. These periods of resonance are the ones where massive numbers of virtual souls were being created. Why? Because there was a lot of force being exerted, trying to change, trying to slow down, trying to redirect the divine plan. What happens when you try to do that? You're not allowed to because of karma. You're winked out of God's universe, or a God's universe. There were two to start out with, God, anti-God, if you will. Now there's more, because this last phase of the project, based around humanity, allows all souls to eventually rise to a God level and have their own creative universe where they can experiment to their heart's content with ideas that may be wonderful, may be crap. Maybe it's the thing that's been tried a million times before, like communism, like oneness. Oh, we're all one. You just have to make sure everybody realizes that by beating their heads with oneness, then everything will be perfect. Sorry. I just have a hard time dealing with folks that are caught up in that, because there's so many of you and you think you're so advanced spiritually and you've barely had one see the light experience, if you've had any at all in this lifetime. Because I can promise you that with the growth of the human species, you only have to look at the population of Earth as it's changed over time to know that the vast majority of you are very, very new to the human species, which, because the human species is the centerpiece of the humanity experiment, the final law of karma, which involves virtual souls and virtual universes, which now apply to all souls that are within the new law of karma, who are getting the opportunity to now grow and learn to be gods and have their own universe. Many have advanced to that point already and are playing the game at a higher level. Not many are playing at the highest level. As I've told you, there are 4 levels of godhood, just like there are 4 levels of physical incarnation experience, analogous to the 4 dimensions, space and time. There are 4 levels of spiritual incarnation, where you integrate the physical experiences. There are also 4 levels of God incarnation, which provide the God experiences that get integrated with your spiritual experience. So the spiritual is kind of a center point of all incarnation, and is another kind of incarnation that's just more connected, more knowledgeable than the physical incarnation, but is less knowledgeable than the God incarnations you've had, if you've had any. Because you don't get to have any God experiences until you earn the God level. How do you know if you've earned the God level? You start having incarnations where you have strange, spiritual powers, psychic powers. That's not the destination. It can be, and you may plateau there and have incarnation after incarnation, thinking that your particular brand of spiritual healing is the best thing since buttered toast. And what you may have just been doing is putting people under enough spiritual pressure to force them to bifurcate into a virtual soul and a real soul. And you have no real idea the kind of karma that you're building up for yourself, the kind of barriers that you're building up that eventually will cause you to lose your godhood, to fall from grace. Because the moment you get to heaven after being a great healer, being a law of attraction guru that can show everybody how to materialize houses and wealth and the perfect relationship in your life, oh, you just do like me, use the power of your mind. If that's working for you, great. If it's working at a higher level and you can actually think you're getting other people to somehow become like you, well, that could be great too. But what you're actually doing, if you try to extend your powers to others, if you try to manipulate them, even helpfully, you're taking on karma. You're pushing another soul in a direction that you really don't know is going to be good for them. So I think what I'd like folks to consider are a few key points to take away here. Your first spiritual awakening is not the destination. If you think you've hit enlightenment after chanting with a guru for a few weeks, after a few nights of ayahuasca ceremony, after an incredible LSD trip, after an inspirational sermon from your pastor, after getting energized by the latest fake news propaganda agenda to become a crusader for Ukraine, yeah, or a crusader for vaccines, or a crusader for any of the other things that they've been programming your mind to become passionate about. That's a beginning to awakening. Having a higher passion is part of every soul's journey, and it's what gives meaning to our life. And the search for meaning is something everybody wants, everybody does, and commercial technology is aware of that. And the vast majority of meaning to be found out there is commercialist, is materialist, has no interest or conception that you have a soul, that there's anything but money to be made and people to be taken advantage of. And this is the essence of going down the path of atheism. Atheism encourages social Darwinism. It encourages the most hard-hearted version of spiritual narcissism. Because if you don't acknowledge any spiritual force in your life, any higher power, any divine retribution or karma, you can rationalize dehumanizing, despiritualizing anything. And you essentially allow yourself to become a programmable attack dog, promoting whatever products that you're passionate about because you've been sold a good story today, attacking others for not using those products or not uh, you know, spreading the religion. And this is this is part and parcel of all the harm that is being caused by social media. Now, this doesn't mean that we can put the genie back in the bottle. And spiritual Luddites who want to go back to some mythical golden age are just as narcissistic, just as, and so narcissism, spiritual narcissism especially, physical narcissism is just an outgrowth of that. All narcissism is fundamentally spiritual, is basically getting to the point where you can rationalize, you can accept as truth things that are completely inconsistent with the laws of the multiverse, which include karma. If you can rationalize behaving selfishly because I'm the better race, I'm the better sex, I'm the most oppressed, you're going down the dark side. And you're going to spend a lot of time in universes that are pretty dystopian because they're basically universes run by gods that don't want to accept the reality of the laws that pervade the multiverse. And the most unacceptable law is karma, because it's one that's in the process of being finalized. There are parts in the universe where karma is not working yet, or it's working under a different version. Actually, that's more true, is it's working under a different version. Because karma, as I said, goes back to the Big Bang. So if you are experiencing reality in a physical universe, you are experiencing karma. If you are experiencing reality in the spiritual world, in the afterlife, you are probably experiencing karma, unless you are one of the old souls that is hanging on to incarnation in a previous version. Now, what are those old souls hanging on to incarnation in previous versions? Older souls, I should say. Well, the oldest of them are the ones that carved out their physical niche, as it were, in the early universe. Galaxy clusters, galaxies, the large structure things that haven't been challenged by running into each other and having to be challenged to accept a new version of karma. Maybe not the final version, because the final version has been under test in this universe, in the Gaia experiment. Now, what does that imply to these other larger experiments? Well, those larger experiments were not based upon this new law of virtual souls, virtual universes. So you go outside the earth, and their version of karma is still one that basically flips souls between God's universe and anti-God's universe. But karma is still active there. It's just very poorly understood because there's very little visible evidence of it in these other species, in these other planets, other galaxies, the rest of the Milky Way. They're seeing a different version of it, and they may be the most advanced technological civilization. They may be the most advanced spiritual civilization and have the power to melt stone simply by focusing their cone of power onto rock, make concrete out of any stone. But they don't necessarily have any understanding of the divine plan or how they fit into it in an earlier age, how they're going to be reintegrated with it when what's going on this planet with humanity spreads. Now, how is this spread going to happen? We touched on that before. Because it's an operation of virtual souls and virtual universes. These virtual universes are already being created and populated as we speak. What's different now? You say, well, what's different is we are now inventing technologies that are analogous to what the change is. We're finally able to put the last part of karma into words, into expression that we can write down, that we can make permanent. This is how ideas become fleshed out enough to become religions. All religions have been an attempt by folks who got a certain stimulus that was consistent with the time, the culture, the maturity of human technologies to try to express universal truths, spiritual truths, in a way that seemed most useful to the culture around them. This is why there were so many messianic figures carrying similar messages, but maybe different. Some with an idea that, well, we just need to all believe in this Christ thing and force it on everybody else, whether they wanted it or not, and everything's going to be perfect. Well, where's the understanding of karma in that idea? The understanding of equal and opposite reaction? There is none. So early Christians went off trying to force others to accept their beliefs, trying to maybe modify those beliefs so they would be more palatable, easier to sell, until it became a belief system purely based on achieving materialist power and wealth and influence. This is the essence of what was the Catholic Church before it faced the pressure of the Reformation and started really seriously mending its ways. This was the force behind the split of the Christian Church between Orthodox and Catholic. This is the force behind the further split that became Islam. These are all evidence of karma, of religious karma, species karma, historical karma. And these are still going on today. What's new today is finally we have the words and the technology to express, to duplicate what the ultimate solution is. Once we can demonstrate it, then we'll be able to look at what happens with our most advanced multiverses, our most advanced video games, what they do to human behavior, how it maps to the spiritual world, the world of creative thought and creative science, the evolution of ideas through testing, and inevitably we will come to an understanding of what is, in essence, the religion of spiritual science. Spiritual science that has evolved to the point of a fair and universal implementation of karma. I know this. How do I know this? I know this from personal experience. I know it from literally years of being tortured by thoughts, being tortured by cognitive dissonance that I've seen in my life and others, and trying to find solutions, trying to find spiritual solutions, thought solutions, not getting too much tempted to go implement physical solutions, band-aids, temporary fixes. I've done my fair share of that, believe me. And I still do, because nobody has all the answers. But I view what I do now as an experiment building upon what I already know about this human experiment, about the experiments going on throughout the multiverse. And so my use of knowledge and experience now is accretive, not destructive. If I get new information, I see a new side to a problem, I don't throw out everything I learned before and say, oh, I'm a communist now. Yep, that's the only way. No, I'm a Republican. That is the only thing important. I'm a capitalist. That's going to solve all the world's problems. You see how stupid this is? If you go down that path of religious zealotry in anything, you're going to end up in a very dark place. I've been accused recently of being dogmatic, being all the things that I'm telling others they are, and I accept that. That's the first reaction when your worldview is challenged. Do I do it? I suppose I do once in a while, but mostly it's because I get tired of being challenged by levels of questions that I've already dealt with years ago, understood many, 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 many lives ago. I get impatient like anybody else. But if you're listening to this and you're one of these people that think this Rob is some stuck-up, egotistical know-it-all, I would encourage encourage you, instead of just attacking me, find something that you can disagree with, and let's talk it over. Let's argue the point. Let's see who's right. See how much evidence there is for or against. See how many corollaries, how many other so-called facts derive from the negation of what I'm saying. See where that leads. This is how philosophy, the philosophy of science, the philosophy of spiritual science, which is the greater world of philosophy, since thoughts are all spiritual, this is how it works. If you want to compete with the great minds of the past, and you're out attacking and negating what is uncomfortable to your worldview, you're not intelligent, you're not smart, you're not virtuous, you're as far from it as can be. You're probably only 1 or 2 incarnations away from having woken up as a virtual soul. And maybe you should have taken a few more incarnations as a virtual soul before you set off on your own and grabbed your own free will, went out and tried to do it my way. Now, when I tell somebody, and I do, I suggest to them that they are not a very mature soul, not a very old soul. In fact, that they're probably a very young soul, and maybe even a virtual soul. This is not an insult in any way, shape, stretch of the imagination. The whole point of humanity is to perfect the creation of virtual souls. And it's not a bad thing. Being a virtual soul is a good place to start, because before that, souls were created as particle-antiparticle pairs and had to go through many incarnations as not very interesting soul vehicles to learn enough to be allowed to advance to a new soul vessel. The heaven of elementary particles is not a very exciting place. Like, okay, well, did you encounter any new particles this time? What did you decide to do about it? Okay, well, I think you need to go back and spend a little bit more time as an electron. Sorry. That's what their heaven looks like. It's not a very exciting and wonderful place. They have free will. They don't get many choices. As a virtual soul, you've been the beneficiary of all the accumulated experience of the original soul, which you forked off of. It's a great gift. It's a good starting place. It's a much more fair starting place than most people get. Most souls got before then. My wife is telling me I'm at about an hour. I think we're getting close to finishing. So I'm going to see what she wants money for now. She's making the money sign at me. And I'll wrap this one up. I'll probably be on again very soon because there's other stuff I have to cover. But this is probably a good point to wrap this session up. So for the Omnist Hour, it's Rob Trump. Like, share, subscribe, argue, attack, whatever you want to do. But I hope you will tune into my channel again. Thank you.